Many years after Adam and Eve, there was a man named Abraham. Through him was born all the people of Israel that we know today. Abraham was a correct and fearful man. Then one day God spoke to him and made a covenant with him, promising to make him a nation. And this is what happened. Abraham had a son named Isaac, and from that son all people were born. The name Isaac means the son of the promise. But there is a detail. Abraham was an elderly man, and his wife too. I couldn't have a child. But even so, everything happened as God promised. Isaac grew up and had twin sons, Esau and Jacob. And Jacob was chosen by God to inherit the promises he made to his father Abraham. So God changed Jacob's name to Israel. And that is why we have the country Israel. And Jacob had a large family. Among his sons he had Jose. Jose was sold as a slave by the brothers who were jealous of him. But Joseph was God-fearing, and God changed his life. Joseph was eventually sold to Egypt and was imprisoned for many years. He had a gift for interpreting dreams. One day Pharaoh had a dream, and none of the palace sages knew how to unravel the dream. Then someone spoke to Pharaoh about Joseph, and Pharaoh ordered Joseph to be brought before him. Joseph unveiled Pharaoh's dream. The dream revealed that there would be a time of 7 years of plenty, and then there would be 7 years of drought, hunger and misery. Jose suggested Pharaoh there to keep food during the 7 years of plenty so as not to go hungry during the dry season. Pharaoh was so impressed by Joseph's ability to interpret his dream that he appointed him governor of Egypt. From being a prisoner slave, Joseph became the greatest authority in Egypt after Pharaoh. It all happened as Joseph had said. Egypt was saved thanks to Joseph. And during the drought, the brothers who had arrested Joseph went to Egypt to buy food. They would not recognize Jose, as he was very young when he was sold. Joseph forgave his brothers who were sorry for what he did. Joseph brought his father and brothers to Egypt and took care of them. In the end, Jose understood that it was all God's plan to save his family from 7 years of drought. Joseph's family lived in Egypt many years and became a large people. With the reign of a new pharaoh, the people of Israel, formerly called Jacob, were made slaves until God sent Moses to deliver them through the 10 plagues, and when the Red Sea opened, God gave the land of Canaan to his people. During the time the people walked in the desert on their way to Canaan, God instructed Moses to build a tent where the priests would offer offerings to him, and the Ark of the Covenant that represented God's presence among his people. But it didn't just represent because God was present among them. Canaan is where the country of Israel and Palestine is today. The people needed guidance, so God gave Moses the 10 Commandments so that the people could live well and without sinning. That's where the Old Testament of the Bible was made. This Old Testament, also known as the Law of Moses, were laws as the name says, that is, the people would be saved if they followed the laws. Many of the things they had in the law were related to the care that God had with the health of the people who at that time did not have the science as we have today. So they could die for things that are very simple today. For example, the morpho that gave in the houses. There was a law that said, if there was a morph in the house, they would have to get out of it and burn it completely, because the person would die if he breathed the morph. The people were separated by tribes according to families. It is the 12 tribes of Israel that represent the 12 sons of Jacob. Jacob is the one that God changed his name to Israel. These are the 12 tribes: Reuben, Simeon, Levi, Judah, Dan, Naphtali, Gad, Asher, Issachar, Zebulun, Joseph and Benjamin. After a while, the 12 tribes were named after 10 of the children of Israel and 2 of the children of Joseph, who were blessed by Israel as if they were their own children. They are Ephraim and Manasseh. When they were still in the desert, God gave Moses the 10 Commandments. When you will have no other gods besides me. You will make no idol for yourself, no image of anything in heaven, on earth, or in the waters beneath the earth. You will not bow down before them or worship them, because I, the Lord your God, am a zealous God, who punishes children for their parents' sins until the third and fourth generation of those who despise me, but I treat them with kindness up to 1,000 generations to those who love me and obey my commandments. You shall not take the name of the Lord your God in vain, for the Lord will not let anyone who takes his name in vain go unpunished. Remember the Sabbath day, to keep it holy. You will work 6 days and do all your work on them, but the seventh day is the Sabbath dedicated to the Lord your God. On that day you will not do any work. Neither you, nor your sons or daughters, nor your male or female servants, nor your animals, nor the foreigners who live in your cities. For in 6 days the Lord made the heavens and the earth, the sea and everything in them, but on the seventh day he rested. Therefore the Lord blessed the seventh day and sanctified it. Honor your father and mother, that you may live long in the land that the Lord your God is giving you. You will not kill. You will not commit adultery. You will not steal. You will not give false testimony against your neighbor. You will not covet your neighbor's house. You shall not covet your neighbor's wife, nor his male or female servants, nor his ox or donkey, nor anything that belongs to him. Those were the commandments that your people of Israel gave. God also chose Aaron, Moses' brother, to be his priest, and so all of Aaron's family were priests from generation to generation. The priest was responsible for offering sacrifice to God Peter for the sins committed by the people. God then loved Moses to build the Ark of the Covenant that represented the presence of God among his people. They also built a tent with sacred objects. It was like a time to worship God. But it was not a building because they were still in the desert. But no one could enter time but the priests. The priests intermediated man to God. Moses died at a time when the people were still in the desert, but God had already chosen Joshua as his successor. Joshua led the people to Canaan. During the time that the people were still in the desert with Moses, they had to fight against enemy peoples. With Joshua they also fought and won all wars. Joshua, known for having broken down the walls that surrounded the city of Jericho. After Joshua died, the people were already organized. The highest authority was the priests, and God spoke to his people through them. But the people saw that the neighboring nations had a king and were dissatisfied because they wanted to have a king to rule them. So God chose Saul, who was Israel's first king. After Saul, King David. Then his son Solomon, who was a most wise man. God was pleased with Solomon because he was a good man, so he promised to give him what he asked for. Solomon asked for wisdom to rule the people justly. So because he asked for wisdom instead of asking for riches, God gave him wisdom and many riches. The first temple built in Israel was the temple built by Solomon in Jerusalem, his capital. As Solomon's death, his son came to rule. However, he did not follow God's commandments and caused the people to turn away from God. So God allowed Babylon to invade the city and overcome Israel and destroy the temple that Solomon built. Every time the people turned away from God, he only remembered God when he needed his help. So God allowed me to turn to him again. Babylon took the people as a slave, and they lived like that for 40 years. Until they cried out to God, and God helped him free them from bondage. They returned free to their city and rebuilt the time. It was a long time before Jesus Christ was born, giving rise to Christianity, which is also called the Gospel. But I'm not going to go into details because I want to tell the story of Jesus in another video session. Rome dominated Israel and the people had to pay taxes to Pilate. Rome was a people who had their own gods and did not follow the commandments of the God of Israel. When Jesus gained fame everywhere, the Romans feared that Jesus would take the throne of Israel. Pilate of Rome had him arrested and killed Jesus. The story is clear and shows that Rome was always the enemy of Christianity, because even after the death of Jesus, Rome continued to persecute and kill Christians to end Christianity. Jesus' disciples, Matthew, Luke, Paul, Peter, all of them were tortured and killed by Rome. In the year 70 after Christ, The Roman general named Titus burned Jerusalem after a revolt by the people of Israel who no longer accepted the exploitation of Rome, forcing him to pay tribute. This historic moment is called the First Jewish-Roman War or Great Jewish Revolt. Rome destroyed the Second Temple that was the sacred symbol of the Jews. They left only one wall standing, so that Israel would always remember that they were defeated. This wall is the Wailing Wall, the tourist spot that we see today in Israel. This is not told in the Bible, but it is told by history. Before Rome killed the disciples, they had already founded the first Christian church. The Bible shows several letters from Paul to the churches of the time. So the first church to exist was not the Catholic Church in Rome. In fact, Rome was an enemy of Christianity. Later, probably because she knew she could not end Christianity, so she founded the Catholic Church. The curious thing about all this is that Rome hung the images of the disciples that she herself killed on the walls of the temple. Sinister. Would he have done this for the same purpose he did when he left the Wailing Wall? So that they never forget who killed him. History shows that Rome is still trying to end Christianity, but in a strategic way. Since she was unable to destroy it, she then misrepresented the sacred books. In the Middle Ages, the Bible was under the control of the Catholic Church. They then translate the sacred texts into Latin and read in Latin for people who did not understand a single word in Latin. And so they misrepresented the gospel and taught things that the God of Israel abhorred, like idolatry. This is clearly a desecration. Baptism of an innocent child, mandatory celibacy, confessing sins to man, Mary intercessor. Jesus made it clear that he is the only one who intercedes for God for us. After death they pray to save the person's soul. The Bible says that after death there is no more salvation. Money is charged for this prayer ceremony. Another curious thing is that the Catholic Church created the practice of baptizing children by giving them godparents, who would then have the responsibility to raise them, in case their parents died or were unable to care for them. Masonry is adept at this practice of supplying the other's family, should one of them die. Could Freemasonry originate from the Catholic Church? We cannot say, but the similarity is noteworthy. They also told the people that in order to be entitled to salvation they would have to pay indulgence to the church to be entitled to live in heaven. Christianity, of course, she said that salvation is free, because Jesus bought the salvation of everyone dying on the cross. So see how this practice of the Catholic Church is actually profanity against everything that was sacred to Israel. The Catholic Church has become powerful and rich. Even priests were deceived. Another day Martin Luther was upset because the people had no access to the Bible. Then he started to translate and distribute the excerpts to the people. The Catholic Church did not like this attitude and started to pursue Luther, to kill him. But he ran away and hid during the time he was in hiding. He's in his entire Bible, and thanks to him, we had access to the sacred texts we have today. Thanks to archaeology. Original sacred texts were discovered, as they were written in several copies by several people from Israel. They proved that the Catholic Church did not change the content, but the Papola wrote 7 books and I add their Bible. So these books are not part of the Christianity of Jesus and his disciples. The books created by the Pope are these: Tobias, Judith, 1st Maccabees, 2nd Maccabees, Baruch, Wisdom and Ecclesiastical. The original Bible has the book called Ecclesiastes, which cannot be confused with ecclesiastical.